нас слышно?
Да, вас отлично слышно, и вы даже иногда не пропадаете. Вы так иногда исчезаете.
Sometimes you're fading away into the background, but sometimes you're here, so...
Да, всем добрый вечер.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anna Tulkacheva, and I'm a media artist, and I'm also a computer science expert. First, I studied cybernetics and mathematics, then I developed some. I was also into computer linguistics, and then I graduated from the Rodchenko school, that's a school, and now I'm mostly into art, and I also program quite a bit. But lately, I'm slowly and gradually coming to VR, and I understand that this is our new reality. And here with me, Andrei Nosov is my longtime friend and collaborator. We have made a number of projects together. Good evening. I'm very glad to be here. I'm also doing a bit of video art and media-specific art, and I experiment with the new media. And I'm concerned about getting the image. And my friend, Anya, proposed and suggested us making our new project that is in production since 2018. This is a very complex production of this project. We finished it in February 2020. We presented it offline before lockdown, before COVID, and now we're working to translate it and to transfer it into a format that is accessible online. This project was initially had to be like a VR film, a VR movie. Now we're slowly coming to the general VR installation. This installation may be displayed at museums. It also may be an AEV art movie. It may be just an ordinary standard movie. And now we are interested, of course, in making it online in various stream services. Now I'm giving floor to Anna. She will tell how we created it, and then we will discuss the experience we had with virtual reality and how we can explore its capabilities, experiment with it, and how is the VR language is coming into our age. I think we should share a screen now to show you some pictures. Bear with us. I suppose you can see the screen now, no?
Видны картинки, виден папки и картинки.
А сейчас не видно картинки на развороте?
Много разных картинок.
Well, we can see a lot of pictures actually. Yeah. Sorry for that. Just a second, we'll do this.
Теперь вот
такие симпатичные.
Это просто фотография
относится к
предыстории проекта.
It's a kind of a prehistory of our project. Yeah, and this project of nomadic poetry, it is a part of it. I work with indigenous people, the languages of who are slowly dying out. And in Russia, we have about 50 indigenous people, and some of them are on path to zero extinction. Some of them have already. Are not with us. And I also work with the digital panoramas. And this is on the way to those indigenous people. These are the people who actually work with language. They have their own poetry, they have their own folk songs. And I took pictures of them. It's some kind of a panorama 360. And I also made it as a kind of an interactive panorama, interactive panel. And yeah, it's very slow, sorry for that, but eventually it will load up. So you can click on any part of the panorama, and if you touch the cloud, the sound is produced, or some sound piece is produced that is made in language of those tribes. And for example, if you click on a woman, you can hear how she produces some kind of sound. It may be some kind of tale, or it may be a song. And this is how we translated a visual panorama into sound with text. And we also had the opportunity to do that, because our earlier project was a project where we actually made some trips, but those places were easily accessible. And during this project, we actually reached some places that are not accessible, and we were in a family. We used actually a helicopter to get to them, and they have a completely nomadic lifestyle. And so we decided to engage them, to involve them into our project. And we also made a VR documentary about their life that also portrays their folk legends and their folk history and how it is interacted in the everyday life. And we also wanted to study their lifestyle with their folk pieces of their art, and this is actually some kind of a. So we have a project that portrays their own tales and literature, and we also gathered quite a bit of their tales, where they, for example, tell their children, where they put them to sleep. And Andre here is, you can see him, and he actually collaborated with me. We spent we spent 2 weeks in those indigenous tribes. It's far up north, and when we reached the place, we saw that they didn't have their mythology in a way that is actually portrayed in, for example, in our textbooks. They tell their lifestyle stories, if you may say so, and they are not very different from myth, and history of their lives actually follows the very same history in our tradition. we wrote down their history, their tales, and we picked 6 most interesting, and we presented them, those tales, as a part of our VR movie and a standard so-called flat movie. And and those movies were actually presented to you before our talk. Of course, it was a flat video because we cannot show you VR movie. Now, some words about how it was produced. As a result, we have come to the idea that the stories that we have gathered are different from what we have predicted, because the speech dynamics, the language, and the way they told it was different. And as a result, we now have an installation, a media object, as we call it, that basically consists of 3 media streams. Flat video, and this is, I think, the basis of the installation is the place where they live. So this is basically some kind of frame that is made of skin. It can be actually moved, so they change their own place where they live, like every week. So we constructed it, and the flat video was beamed inside the walls of those of the house, and then a visitor can have the glasses, the 3D glasses, on head-up display, and then see the VR video that is basically consists of their tales and their folk stories. And here we have quite a lot of photos, pictures. This is the beginning of our installation. These are the people we actually portrayed and took photos of. So they went to the place where it was actually screened. It's Norilsk, city up North Russia. And they liked the installation, they liked the show. And we actually gave them a pair of those goggles with glasses. Now maybe it's a part of their folk story. So maybe you now have a footprint in their history. Now I'm also going to show you a couple of photos. Basically, we had the task as artists, for us not to capture their history, not just to have some kind of material before us, but our task was to show the issues of modern problems that those indigenous people have. And of course, visitor, a spectator, sometimes doesn't even have a slightest idea what they have before them, those people. And it was quite interesting for us to implement VR technologies and what it can give us to relate the story, to convey the story to other people. And we choose this strategy of, first of all, to reject any kind of specific narrative, because all the materials, texts, were recorded, their tales, and we try to minimize any editing, any cutting of those material. So it's kind of like a full immersion into their culture. For example, there are stories of them hunting, of them fishing, of them cultivating and doing some farm work. And for example, here you can see their hunting trophy. And it was very important for us that the angle of the camera position was not directly directed, so to speak, traditionally, because we have some scenes when the camera is underwater and actually looks at the fish that was caught, or the camera on top of the head of the elk, just to allow us spectators to see how the animal can see the world. Or we also had there are some pictures made by and captured by drone. It's a very long scene, long shot, how the animals are actually scattered across the whole tundra.
So the family were our co-authors. Some of the scenes were shot by them. We gave them the camera. Sometimes they understood how to use it, and now this project is almost completed. We are looking for distribution of this film. It will be either film or installation or VR film. And now we want to develop this kind of approach, work with VR. And we are looking for the possibilities of production, so we are open to cooperation. And now we can answer your questions, but first I would like to add a little bit about the physical part of the installation. I would like to introduce some other dimensions to the VR, such as smells, for example. So the installation itself was like inside out of the reindeer. So the interior was decorated with reindeer. So if a person put on the glasses, so he could go into and he could see the reindeer and he could smell the smell. So the viewers could touch it and could move in any direction, or they could feel the skin and the fur. So it was a circular space inside, decorated with fur and reindeer skin. The tactile senses were very important for us, so the viewer could touch the reindeer skin and imagine that he's inside the reindeer. One could compare the tactile senses and the smell and the feeling of the reindeer skin above oneself and beneath. So we could not just show the video, but we could make a kind of space. Thank you. Unfortunately, my video did not have a sound, so we will send you a link that you can click the link and can see the film. when it is convenient. So if you have some questions, we are ready to answer. I would like to draw the connection. So if we talk about the telecorporeality, we mentioned that there were still areas which are hard to be accessed for us. So telehaptics and telepresence are the possibilities for us to reach these places. And we also talked about recreating of the space where we are now. So if I understand, if I reformulate the idea of the project correctly, we are talking about the history of anthropology, where telecorporeality and telehaptics are used to make us closer to the place that is almost inexistent now. So it is like traveling in time, reconstructing a 3D space. It is almost a museum now. Telecorp told that when we talk with feedback systems, so we should imagine 40 minutes ahead. And it seems that you are doing a similar thing, so we can imagine that this world does not exist anymore. So we should imagine the point at which it is inexistent. Yes. Here we just put the camera and we imagine that we are present there by means of virtual reality.
Да, кстати, это было бы неплохо, чтобы они действительно все просто постоянно себя архивировали.
It would be good if this is not a kind of Instagram, but a kind of 3D Instagram that could collect all this reality. In fact, it is not a professional equipment. It is not exclusive just for the artists and professionals. So how can we handle the narrative? We know a lot about anthropology, and it is like a continuous monitoring of the other person, the other living being. But a look at the reindeer, for example, is another kind of cooperation. So what have you done to move away from the conventional approach? What was your strategy? First of all, you are becoming the other when you are inside the house of the person living in tundra. It was very important for us to convey the perception of time and the other perception of space.
Мы старались
we tried
сделать его частью
to
пространства.
make the viewer submerge into this space. Now there are special kinds of
А можете
shots.
поговорить немножко про это время? Вот какое оно это время? То есть,
How,
ну,
can you please explain a little bit about this kind of time,
есть такая,
this perception of time?
Это время.
So how can you
360
reflect it?
этого времени.
Да, тут, мне кажется, есть проблема, проблема нового вообще, да, потому что у нас жизнь построена.
I guess that it's an issue. We can't imagine what will happen tomorrow.
В истории кино, вот именно в связи с ковидом, да.
It is also related to COVID. We are living in the continuous stream of unexpected events.
Профессиональная активность придумывает новое, да, и это ценно в нашей культуре. И наша социальная система, экономическая система.
Our social system and economy
постоянно, как мы видим. Традиционный мир
arranged in the way that there can be a lot of unexpected events. So we don't know what will happen tomorrow, in 10 years, in 30 years.
Да, проистекает от их образа жизни, от экономики.
It is because of the lifestyle, because of the economy, because they mostly use natural resources. That is why
Да, и они воспринимают все-таки наше присутствие или какие-то
they perceive our presence just like the one that can happen and cannot happen.
Вот, и это выражается скажем, в каком-то, во-первых, модусе существования.
And it is reflected in the lifestyle.
Да, часть рассказа они вспоминают остров, который случился
And there is a case. They remembered the case that happened to one of them. So one of these people was hunting, and he got an injury, so he lost his finger. And when they were describing this, they could not even remember whether it was winter, whether it was summer. They could not remember the year, because just every day is similar to the other day. They perceive time and space in a different way. That is why it is a little bit different. If we talk about films, so we are expecting something from the film, from arranging the shots. When we cut out some shot, we need to arrange everything in a different way. So, and here we can also understand when will be the next splice. So the viewer is to decide the focus for his or her attention. We listened to the story for many times, so we are not very objective. So maybe to the viewer it will seem like repetitive, unlogical, but at a certain point a viewer starts to pay attention. But the most important is the rhythm of this narrative. For example, for 2 days you just ride along the snow. And this is not a problem. So it's just the ordinary way of explaining the route. And for us, artists, it is the possibility to experiment in conveying the perception of time and space.
Он действительно спорный, да? Хотя мы понимаем, что иногда они приближаются к очень убедительной передаче, и мы
it's a little bit arguable, of course.
Ну и против режиссеров, которые работают в этом ключе.
Of course, we respect all the artists, and for us it is an experiment. We started to experiment with modern devices.
Да, то есть это такой перевод этнографии из привычного этнографического музея в какую-то такую совершенно другую.
Also, it is like transferring some ethnographic matter into the other kind of reality, virtual reality. Thank you very much. Now it's time to give floor to our next speaker, Evgeny Malishkin. He will talk about the telepresence.
Коллеги, добрый вечер.
Dear colleagues,
Меня слышно?
good evening. You can hear me, right?
Слышно.
Yep, we can hear you.
Вообще, вот после такого
And
медитативного
after
доклада
this
хочется немножко помолчать. Очень
talk,
хороший
it was
доклад, мне очень
kind of
понравился. Спасибо.
meditative,
Про
and
оленей, про
just I have the desire just to preserve the silence, to keep silent for a little bit. It was a good talk, and I liked it very much.
Просто подумать о том,
And I just want you to have a notion of presence. How present is actually constructed, and what is the notion of it?
выстраивать или моделировать.
When we try to simulate the presence, it is not very clear how your present or our present actually consists of. When we talk about the body that is being here, it's often
такой навык, который
a skill
которым должен обладать всякий воспитанный человек.
that is actually obligatory basically for everybody.
Еще, да, то есть вот
Being
там, не знаю,
in your body,
если ты за столом, то
and for example, if you're at the table, it's not very good to scratch your nose or to pick your nose, for example. And if you're,
а если ты в ковиде, то
for
нельзя
example,
лицо вовсе, да. Но
in times of pandemic, it's not a good idea to touch your face. It's very clear. And of course, there are some ideas that sometimes we can turn off our bodies. But how can we turn it on? It's not very clear sometimes. And we have events of presence that are sometimes quite hard to tell. So for example, if you're an athlete, it's very hard to condition yourself. The body is yours and you have done it several times, but it's sometimes requires luck to condition. And just pointing out that we have a problem, it's sometimes hard to adjust yourself, to make yourself present. And it's a very interesting idea. I want to point out that I actually had a chat with one of my friends. We were on Zoom and there was a dog outside who barked. And I understood the environment because I understood the environment that is actually is hearable, because when you hear the sound, you remember and recall the environment in which you once have been. This is the presence through sound, and it's open,
так же, как, ну, понятно, что картинка плоская, но тоже...
And of course, we understand that the picture is flat, but picture also provides you some degree of presence. And I watch with great pleasure how, for example, people walk around New York and screen big masses of protesters. They're just trying to recall the environment in New York, and for me it's very interesting. And those acts of telepresence are very understandable.
По крайней мере, одно такое ощущение,
We also have another feeling that it's very hard to process.
в отношении которого нет готовых
And we do not have any ready decisions and ready solutions for it. Traditionally, since the 5th century, it's called sixth sense. This sixth sense is the sense that doesn't have any organ inside of our bodies. Of course, we have organs for different senses, but for this sixth sense, it does not have any kind of a body part or organ.
Насколько это чувство участвует в...
And the question remains whether this sixth sense affects any kind of our presence.
Показать, что это очень важно.
This is what I think is very important,
Есть такая знаменитая статья,
because we have a very famous article and I like it, and I like the response of Peter Hawking. He asks whether a person can feel the pain of other people. It's not about physiological things, because of course we all have some degree of empathy, but this is how the language constructed. If you are not able to feel the pain of other, you're most likely not able to feel the pain that is yours. If you are not empathetic enough, if you look at other person and you do not understand that the pain is there, so maybe we're not ready to feel the pain of yours. And in this sense, it's a specific example of touch, for example, because the touch is some kind of interaction between bodies. When we interact with each other, we touch the other body of another person or of any living being. It's not very clear how we interact with that presence, because on one hand we have a lot of haptic experience, but on the other hand we cannot fully understand it, we cannot fully comprehend it, because those touches and those sensations that we have are those that we can process rather.
Ну вот, я как бы описал проблему, в которой...
And this is the issue that we have to live through, and it's present with us, especially during these unprecedented COVID times. These are the times of turning off, because I missed my students, because I couldn't fully adapt to new reality, and it's very hard for me not to give any lectures now. I just miss other people, and I try to reflect upon it. Probably if you have some kind of a VR technology for those students, maybe it would be easier. Yes, you may be right, but I think that's still not enough. And this is another topic. What makes a lecture good? It's not about eye contact. You can hear all those sensations from other people, micromimics. noises that people make. You cannot see it during, for example, Zoom call, because the picture is very small. And it's a very big difference between understanding that and feeling it. And it creates this kind of tension, specific tension. And when this tension is here, we can understand that maybe something is not very good. Anyways, any presence is basically a movement. This is a movement not of only one body, but rather a mass of bodies. And this is another example that actually shows you that there is some movement that we are actually experiencing. And one of our first speakers today, that he took rather eyes of those people that are somewhere else, meaning that there was some kind of sharing experience, that the eyes were located in Europe, and for example his hands were in the US. It's a very interesting experience, I think, but it wasn't like really shown how could it can be synchronized, because we have some degree of endeavoring, so to speak. And there were, I think there were ways to synchronize those movements. I don't think I know the answer to the question how to fortify, how to turn this moving body into the haptics, into the telehaptics, and the movement itself should be somehow marked. And we deal with those movements a lot of times during our bodily acts in our everyday lives, and those practice are called very differently. For example, when a goalkeeper, he has those senses of what's behind him, and when he moves, he knows where he is. Or for example, a basketball player knows the position of the net in any position on the field. And for example, a smoker, an experienced smoker, always understands that the desire to have a smoke, it's a desire on the tip of their fingers, and it's the sensation of their body. It's not actually a physiological desire. And here I mean just one thing: the touch, haptic, is what we lack today in our virtual world, and it's not all about touching the object. If we try to emulate it, emulate the touch, it should start not with the touch itself, but with the movement. It should be emulation of the movement, of the sixth sense. Because, for example, when you ring the hand of a friend, you first move towards your friend, and then you do the ringing. And it's some kind of a continuation of the movement that had occurred. And in this sense, I think that the emulation of the sensation is quite easy, to be honest. Because for me, a name, when you look at something, you watch it, you try to analyze it, or with your ears, you hear only about like 15% of all sounds a living being produces, but we still make sense of what is being told to us.
скорее всего, мы
So here it's pretty much the same.
немногое ощущаем из того,
We
что
feel just a tiny bit
решение,
of what is actually happening,
но вот какие-то простые
but
тактильные
some
средства
very
позволяют
simple
нам ощутить
haptic
именно то, что
devices
начиналось
can
раньше.
help us feel
Ну вот,
what is actually being
и значит, тогда же,
transmitted.
вот в начале сегодняшнего дня мы обсуждали
And at the beginning of today, we discussed body sharing and right hand sharing. He also touched the topic that we should always anticipate something, that there is always surprise coming. And I think that the pain and pleasure, this is what actually is interesting for us when we talk about haptics. And it's of course some kind of delusion of our expectation, because we await our pain or pleasure, but the true pleasure is some kind of disturbance of our expectation, of our imagination. It's something else. And to emulate this feeling of surpassing what is expected is, I think, something worth emulating by emulating the initial movement. Other bodies are something that actually within our society, and it's a thing for you to feel your body, to understand that the body is yours. And presence, I think, is a modus of delusion of what I expect. And to be present is feeling sadness or happiness about things that are happening around me. Be that sadness, be that happiness, or be that something neutral, it is some kind of reality effect.
Поэтому вот, значит, как научиться
So
этому реальности?
how can we make sense of this reality effect? How can we emulate it? How to emulate the presence? I know some exercises, really. There are a lot of them actually, to kind of stimulate presence. This is something worth doing, and this exercise shows you that the other body may be felt even in a better way than yours. I have the video, but I think it's not enough, but I will try to show you.
Ну да, вот. Ну понятно, да, что делают, ну то есть они стоят друг против друга.
So you see that they stand in front of each other and interact with help of their hands. So you can see that one is experienced, more experienced, and the other one is losing.
Ты способен чувствовать то, как способен чувствовать напряжение другого.
The most important thing is that you can feel the strain created by the hands of the other person. So if you're quite trained in this exercise, you will feel it very well. So
ты можешь победить в этом.
You will start in time and you can win in this exercise. So the very situation itself is that you can win by feeling other person. It means that our own body is the continuation of something coming from the outside, and you can be experienced in it, or in other words, trained or not trained. So that is what I wanted to say, that's it.
Значит, каков же вывод из
So what is the conclusion?
этого тезиса? Вывод простой.
So the conclusion is quite simple.
Телеприкосновение
This
или теле-шестое чувство, шестое чувство, которое мы
telehaptics
которое мы
or
способны
the sixth sense
или на расстоянии.
that we can produce right here or over distance.
Техническая задача.
It can be not a technical task.
Возможно, что технически это довольно просто.
Maybe technically it is quite simple, but it's more for the training of the user.
Гораздо успешнее и успешнее, чем технические, чем любые технические.
Experience of the user can be even more useful than some technical solutions. So
Утонченных удаленных касаний, возможно, придется писать не столько код, сколько набор.
To achieve some sophisticated touch over distance, maybe we will need some kind of exercises. So if we want a successful telepresence, we need to
не столько электрическая дрель, сколько коловорота.
think
Коловорот это то, что
more about physical things.
Причем, если ты умеешь, то даже быстрее.
So in fact, everything is much easier.
Бухгалтер на счетах считает быстрее, чем восьмиклассник с помощью калькулятора.
So, for example,
Хотя счеты намного проще.
people can calculate quite easier with abacus than with the help of a calculator.
Будет успешнее, если мы попросту научимся.
So the sixth sense can be achieved much easier if we know how to do it.
И который можно утрачивать.
This skill can be obtained and it can be lost.
Наше такое удаленное тело, а если
This skill can be included into our cooperation over distance. So if COVID will not end in short time, it will be very useful. Thank you, Evgeny. It means that if we train ourselves in quite simple things to feel something unusual, it will be the experience of telepresence. For example, if for example, I'll tell myself I'm touching the doorknob with the doorknob handle, and I can tell myself that I feel the smell of the flowers. So what do you mean that figures and movements are perceived by eyes and tongue? We can see two objects. How can we perceive it with our tongue? We can see two objects, we can hear two objects, we can feel with our tongue two smells. Can we feel 10 smells with our tongue? Yes, we can, but it will be much more difficult. For example, it is quite easy to see 10 objects, but it is quite difficult to feel them, to feel 10 smells, to feel 10 smells.
Мы фигуру число движения воспринимаем через органы, которые...
We perceive figures and movements by our organs that to which those objects are external. So for me to find myself in the nomadic area, I need to feel the smell of the reindeer skin. I don't know about the smell, it is very difficult, but to feel the touch of the reindeer skin, we don't always need the skin itself. We need to think and to imagine. So, for example, when you close your eyes and you're told that somebody will put a burning cigarette to your hand, so a person would feel as if he has a burn. So the feeling is just the continuation of the movement. And to feel something, to feel, for example, the reindeer skin, maybe we even don't need the reindeer skin. Maybe we will just need a very simple device. I'm just imagining, I don't know how it can be in reality, but I just say that we can be easily be deceived.
В метафизических размышлениях объясняет, что, собственно, зрению мы не можем верить.
Yes, it was even explained in metaphysical description, because sometimes when we dream, it seems that we are working, but in reality we are just sleeping.
Вообразить себе студента объемного. То есть это вполне те самые 15%. Почему это на семинар не удается?
So that is why I made an example with lecture, because this data is not enough for me to imagine a real student. I don't know how a box will look like that will enable me to feel real students. Maybe it will be constructed very soon.
Рассказывал Сатоми Сугияма о нескольких интерфейсах телехаптики.
That is why one of the speakers told us about different interfaces of telehaptics, such as messenger and special kinds of bracelets, when we can transfer our presence by some device. Yes, it can really work, but if we will try to achieve difficult tasks, it will be quite difficult for us. But I just meant that the effect of presence can be achieved easier.
It's 22 hours.
Because our body is not trained. But if we prepare it, our skills is just the technique.
Хорошо, спасибо.
Okay, thank you.
Да, вопрос. А у кого вопрос? Без контакта?
Somebody has a question. Question from VK.
Вопрос, Евгений, вы говорили о...
I have a question. You said that you miss students, real presence of students. But in fact, they can be physically with you, but mentally somewhere away. So right now we are talking about the physical presence. For example, the students are physically there, but in them, but the mind is wandering somewhere. And so they can be, for example, present via Zoom.
Если студент может присутствовать в одном месте, а находиться в другом, можно ли это место заменить на это? Вот это следует.
Now I see what you mean.
Я боюсь, что это слишком просто. Что вот да, видно, что человек отсутствует, а вот как
When a person is
это и есть задача
mentally
машинерии,
not with me, it is always
эта машина довольно
obvious and evident.
собственно, она на то и направлена, чтобы заставить человека быть здесь
And
определенным образом, нужным образом.
we try to make the person to be here,
Заменить отсутствие на присутствие,
so to change absence with presence is almost impossible.
Ну, и с этим связано то, что сейчас говорят про осознанность, да, это тоже про присутствие здесь и сейчас.
Да, осознанность, но
And that is why
в присутствии я говорил, да, что есть не только осознанность, но и неосознаваемость.
talk about
Вот эта вот узнаваемость пространства.
awareness, consciousness,
Обратил внимание,
and I just,
человек на балконе узнал балкон, пространство за
for
балконом.
example,
Мог бы и не узнавать,
realized what is this
это
space
повысило бы
outside
коэффициент присутствия, да, вот так.
my
Но
house.
если бы это было, и я бы это даже не осознавал, а это легко смоделировать, это повысило бы, вот, собственно,
So if
Про балкон я, кстати, тоже думала, что это о
I just thought
воспоминаниях, а помню,
about
не
it,
было. То есть в результате появляется
just like a memory of
осознание того, чего на самом деле
what did not happen in
нам
reality.
надо на самом деле на этом
But we need to stop here and to give the floor to the other speaker. Thank you, Evgeny.
Я пока скажу, что трансляцию на русском можно смотреть ВКонтакте.
So can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay. Well, hello everyone. It's greetings from Bucharest. It is a great pleasure to be part of all-in-one festival. It was a very inspirational event, and it is always nice to see so many great projects and ideas. So thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity to show some of my artistic work and interests. So, my work deals with the objects and our perception and identification of objects. Generally, my practical toolkit uses the aesthetic of scientific imagery and other tools that can be easily converted into artistic practices. I use different media and methods. I make objects, I mix paint and printing, I device installation, I also create visuals by alternative photographic techniques. But all these methods are grounded together by the idea that the visual identity of an object is not a static given, but a continuous process. So in my work, I've investigated ways of deconstructing and reconstructing all these layers of visual meaning. I did this in a number of past projects, including painting or photography or engravings in biological tissue, but all kind of share the same idea. So I guess what you can actually see in my practice is that I'm keen on blurring boundaries between part and whole, for example, or between natural and artificial, between living and non-living, or just between, I don't know, objects in general as types and tokens. So I guess I should also share the screen with you to show you also some of the works.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, so my interest is, I have like a strong interest in biomaterials. So here it's an bio installation, and I've been using this biomaterial called kombucha. It was one of my first experiments with biomaterials starting 2012. I've been experimenting with it in many ways, living stage or dead and altered and oxidized. So for those who don't know, kombucha is this probiotic material that grows and feeds on sugar in a tea container. So here in this installation, you see it in the natural habitat, tea containers. They're still alive and consuming the sugar with each day. So what I've tried to do was also unravel the aesthetic character of the material and explore somehow this aesthetics of decay that it contains. So the objects are assembled to mimic, even though this living tissue, it mimics dead tissue. And in this sense, it is one way of considering the production of image. And in this case, is when matter becomes the medium and it guides the image making. And another way I like to consider about the image production is the way where the image is guided by form and by the way our mental understanding of the form. After this experiment with living tissue, I've made other experiments with kombucha material. So I've been doing a lot of manipulating of the matter in all its metabolism stages. Here you can see this printing. I actually fed the colony with sugar printed paper. So the bacteria and yeast in the container eats the sugar from the paper, and just the ink remained in the material. I've also made some oxidized drawing, and this was achieved just, you see it in the left part. It was achieved just by drying the wet material on top of some iron wire. I also, in the right part, you can see something else. I just dried the material on top of engraved wood and achieved this engraved biofilm that still maintains the shape of the wood plate. Sometimes I make like hyper aesthetic objects just by placing the kombucha membrane in light boxes. And I have some examples here with all sort of small experiments of I don't know, printing. Sometimes I feed the colony with antibiotics just to see what happens, and probably some of the bacteria died and it's created a different texture. Other times I assemble installations based on the classification of the various interventions I made, each yielding a different results. So you can actually see oxidized drawings, shape manipulating, stages of oxidation because it gets darker with time. Yeah. So about the identity of objects, I was telling that I was always preoccupied by dissolving this identity of objects to trick our perception, to have a way of I don't know, understand how the identity is forming in our minds. So I've been playing with these objects, rocks and meat, just depriving them from details, make them black and white, and already they kind of looks quite similar. And to make them even to create even more uncertainty about the integrity of matter, I've started to use this tissue engineering technique called decellularization. So what decellularization does is that it strips out the cells from biological material, from organs, from tissue, and it is left just a connective tissue, the extracellular matrix of that organ or biomaterial, organic material. So what you can see here, in this case, the one decellularized piece of meat this one. It's placed near a rock. They look also quite similar, and yeah, this one scaffold of meat, it's white and almost translucent, and it kind of seems that its identity it's on hold. What else? So I also cellularized some animal organs and implanted them with artificial silicon parts. So in this case, the organic matter deprived by the organic identity, it looks similar with the artificial silicone leaves and sculptures that accompany them in the containers. They remain suspended somehow in this state, becoming like mere ornaments. So the ghost organs, as they are called in the medical terminology, provide me the prime matter, so to speak, that thing that allow me to rebuild the visual identity of the objects. And my latest projects that I've been starting to work with during the pandemics follows the same idea of identity, but it was also inspired by the effects of pandemics. So during this social distancing time, when probably every one of us seeing a lot of our households and the fear of contamination, it's on everybody's table. I've explored how our physical identity, our body presence, it's bound to the natural surroundings. So I've started to use some of the decellularized material I've been doing recently as support for growing some microorganisms. So here in the slide, you can see some of these decellularized leaves and flowers. And I've started this series that I called the Contamination Series. Here are another scaffolds. It draws on the idea that identities and classification of material objects as processes and not just mere pre-packed statics. So our body, living matter, and its species, even the artifact we interact in our daily existence, are in this ongoing relation with the environment. So I think that both their identity and our identity is the result of this constant negotiation between parts of this whole. So in short, this project deals with the visual deconstructions of our perceptual habits and the way we think about our bodily autonomy. So my attempt was to conspire this biochemical interaction between living and non-living components. Also, it was a way of mapping my immediate surrounding. So after I obtained the decellularized material, I started to collect samples from my apartment, from my studio, from my body, and grow them on these scaffolds. So the resulted were these objects that are still alive in this case, because they are growing every day, bit by bit. So further, I think also it was intended to remind us about our microbiome. We kind of tend to forget about it, and especially in this COVID pandemic, where we are all frightened to get contaminated. We tend to forget that we carry with us bacteria and yeast every time, every day. So yeah. So we literally share our bodies with these small beings, this ecological community. So probably we cannot perform basic functions without them. So we have the constant state of exchange. So the result of visual objects is set to illustrate precisely this provisional character, these provisional limits between entities and organisms and species. These boundaries are part of a dynamic process generated by the local spaces where we actually exist. So contamination series, it reminds us that human and nature are part of the same ontological system, even though the borders between them are not so clear as pictured in a taxonomical table. So, yeah, in the near future, probably I will explore a bit further the potential of the cellulose-based biomaterial to sustain the growing of other types of cells. I can wait to doors from spaces to get like really open and to start working again. So yeah, I guess this is it. Thank you.
I have just a brief comment. As I was watching your work, I was thinking that this seems to be very correct direction that the visual arts should be going into, using the biomaterials, and it's so tempting also to be this someone who works with a live material, because we know that God works with a live material, and then you kind of put yourself in this space. So I was wondering, so there are so many live and semi-live surfaces. So what did this teach you about human skin?
Oh
What
yeah,
did-
kombucha resembles a lot with human
yeah, when I was looking at kombucha, that looks like peeled skin from some kind of animal, or
yeah, it has a lot of
please, human.
and fake letters also. So yeah, it can actually be used as a replacement for skin. So I hope that soon I will test the capacity to grow some human cells in it, because I think it is possible. If the material is decellularized and then neutralized, probably it allows it has a good structure to actually grow human cells in it. And I want to grow like beauty spots, moles. So
I have a long standing dream of growing teeth. I think people should be growing new teeth.
I think I saw a project with someone growing teeth or having.
Oh, send this to me. Yeah, I want to talk with this person. I think I want to do the whole event about growing teeth, limbs, hair, all that, which seems to be, you can't really take it back. Like there is the saying in Russian that you cannot cry over the lost hair. No, I want the lost hair back. Yeah, and continuing this Stellark's idea of prosthesis. Yeah, there was another thing that I was thinking about. Yeah, I will let other people ask questions. I'm not going to be asking all the questions myself. Maybe a second thought. So when we were talking about telepresence, one of the thing that Stellark was saying, and other people were saying that, and something that Evgeny was just talking about, that the personality and the wholeness of this human body is sort of an illusion. We are not the whole thing. We are divided into a multiplicity of our accounts, into our genetical material, which is borrowed from, not borrowed, but grown from someone else. I was thinking that in order to effectively experience telepresence, you probably should be a very small agent. Like if you're a very, very, very small agent, then it's so much easier.
Or maybe in the future when we will all be present as particles with, I don't know, entanglements and that spooky thing at a distance, how Einstein used to call it. So who knows? Maybe
yeah, that would be so nice to
also biological matter. I mean, we already had a virus coming from a part of the globe and spread like everywhere. So I think sure it's spread by contact, but who knows? Maybe in the near future could be spread just by air anyways. Or
Yeah, the air becomes more and more suspicious. I agree that the 20th century sort of invented air as a space that you can arrange like air conditioning or air bombardment or chemical.
Air. I don't know. It has a lot of species in it anyway, so yeah, we cannot protect ourselves from the air.
No. Well, we have. Okay, I'll just let you ask questions. I'll continue later. Just go ahead and ask your question.
No, keep talking. I just wanted to add that, well, it could it could be spread not only by air but in digitally, maybe. It was just a comment that you were saying. I'm sorry, I can't hear anything.
We had those digital viruses, right? We know of the existence of digital
Earlier,
viruses.
some artists making connection between the viral spreading of image and information and the viroids. So, yeah, why not? It's a network.
Yeah. Okay, looks like no one else has questions, and we don't have our next speaker, but we have the speaker who missed his opportunity to talk, so maybe that's about the time to give the floor to David. Laura, what do you think? Should we give the floor to David?
Sure.
Have the next speaker, right?
No, we don't have the next speaker. No.
Okay, David, are you here with us? Yeah, I think we arranged for a specific time, so. Well, then I could ask something else.
Go ahead, totally, just go for it.
So the thing is that I currently also working with bacterial cellulose. So that's why it's very interesting for me your talk too. But there is another element in kombucha. There is the bacteria or the yeast. So you talk, for example, how these images were made and how the medium becomes the meshes. But there is another role, and usually, especially people that is strong believers in posthumanism, ask me a lot about but what is happening with the bacteria? So how do you integrate the role of the bacteria in your artworks?
Well, I started with kombucha, and of course, when I discovered it, I was just drinking a lot of kombucha. It's like such an interesting material, and I didn't know what exactly are the bacteria inside it, or how many of them, or what produces what. I still don't know everything. I just know that it's there are some bacteria and yeast, and some coexist in they're codependent, and some are in a strong concurrence for, I don't know, the living part in the ecosystem. But it's amazing that it actually produces cellulose. It's like very interesting fact about it. And also, I now that I'm working with another cellulose-based material, the leaf scaffolds, they're like so similar. And I decellularized also some kombucha tissue, and they seem to be made from the same thing. And they actually are, but the structure is quite different. I mean, growing some human cells in the flower scaffold is not going to be as easy as growing them in kombucha, because the structure is a bit different. So, yeah, it's an interesting material. So I never planned to actually work with bacteria, because I've been trained as a fine artist. So I've worked a lot with painting and photography for some years. But even when I was working with painting, and I was always fascinated by the scientific illustration. So some of my works followed this imagery with, I don't know, creating some hybrid forms between the vegetable world and animal worlds, organs implanted with plants, and so this kind of stuff. Yeah, now apparently I'm trying to produce them like for real, like living objects.
Yes, and thank you for your answer. And I have also seen some projects, especially in science, that they are modifying the bacteria that produce the cellulose. And for example, this can give a little bit of agency to the bacteria to really like design what kind of form to do, and then you can integrate like the bacterial with another role, more like a collaborator, for example.
Sounds cool to actually have bacteria that changes the form, and because I managed to do that only by killing some of the bacteria in the colony. So it would be great to the bacteria to have this agency and actually model the material in a certain way. Yeah.
Okay. So looking forward to see more of your projects and keep in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any more questions?
David, maybe? Is David? No? Okay, okay.
David hasn't joined.
Okay, so we are waiting for Denise to join, and I have a question to, well, okay, I'll ask a question. Like, just a moment, Denise is here. So, okay, I'll ask it later. Let's give word to Denise.
Денис, добрый вечер. Вот можно уже начинать. Как у вас там красиво, где, в таком чудесном месте.
So we can start. It is very beautiful, the place where you are now. It is in Leningrad region. Good evening. So I will start my presentation straight away.
Всем добрый вечер. Меня зовут Денис Протопопов.
Good evening. My name is Denis Protopopov. I'm an artist working to the interaction of the technology and visual arts.
В последнее время даже
In particular, working with the augmented reality. As an example, I would like to share with you my project. It was demonstrated in 2018 as a part of a project proving the existence of human senses.
Для дополненной реальности. Это была такая выставка.
So it was a kind of exhibition of digital objects and video.
Приложение дополненной реальности, где зрители наводили свое приложение на метку и могли
viewers needed to use application of virtual realities.
В этом, наверное, проекте как раз прослеживается мой интерес к дополненной реальности.
This project confirms my interest in the augmented reality.
Это на самом деле лежит довольно на поверхности
its essence,
реального и виртуального.
Connecting of virtual and real.
Саму особенность работы этой технологии, да, то есть
it is
виртуальной реальности, которая у нас
possible with the help of the augmented reality. Virtual reality disconnects us from the physical world.
Виртуальные объекты накладываются. Это вот был
But here we can continue to monitor the real life and also add other objects to this reality. Now I guess I will move on to the project that started the real work that I'm mostly interested in as an artist. For me, it is important to see my project as a conclusion of some research. Here you can see in immigration, it is a performance. The first night was within the framework of the festival in Moscow. And on the right you can see that it was demonstrated in St. Petersburg. I will tell you a little bit about the performance. It is about the human body in an algorithmic space. It is a multi-channel video, augmented reality, and hypertext narrative. All these three parts are there throughout all the time. When I was developing this project, I was mostly interested in the following issue. How can we define cyborg in the modern technological society? And I guess that coexistence of virtual and real is now very important, because our life is based on the interaction with the interfaces, physical devices. And this conflict between technologies and the human body, as I see it, embodies the dual nature of virtual and real. It also changed the mechanisms of our body.
Because I think when you move your fingers, when you swap your fingers, this is a natural gesture, like you touch your nose, you're touching your skin, or vibration syndrome. That is a syndrome that you think that your cell phone is vibrating, but it doesn't occur in reality. So this is a kind of delusion, and a human being becomes a cyborg, a living being that is basically both a machine and a human being, just interacting with a lot of algorithms. Catherine Hales, one of the American researchers, describes this living cyber being that actually destructs the boundaries of bodily sensations. And this cyborg is a living being that is conceptually, both conceptually and physically, hoped to do something. And it has a lot of interfaces with which he interacts with the reality. This was one of the attempts to think over the concept of the social cyborg. This is the first photo, and this was staged once again in Moscow, in Taganka Theater. It's a multi-channel video, 5 channels to be precise. And photo on the right, this is the second iteration of this play. And for me, it was very interesting to think over and to employ digital space and physical space. I staged it twice, and I tried to make it basically a site-specific project. I tried to pinpoint the right iteration for each of the physical space, try to make a division line. And for me, it is interesting to make as kind of a research on post-internet and post-digital culture. And this project, this work, is presented in a theoretical way, so to speak. Some kind of a discussion of the other side of what we have. And I have a podcast that is some kind of a theoretical part, and it is very closely connected with what I try to point out in my podcast. Podcast is in Russian. It's available not only on Apple Podcasts, but on other platforms, Spotify, etc. And now I'm going to talk about my latest project. It was aired a month ago, in the end of May. This is also a stage play, Capital Voyage. And it is some kind of a second part of the inner immigration. And I started to work at it during winter time, and I thought that I would stage it by spring, but unfortunately I couldn't. So it proposed and supposed to have some kind of a physical form with implementing some AR technology, but life happened and I invented some other form that is actually pretty interesting to me, and it is what I actually make studies of. And this play is also a result of my small study, that the data and the relation to its data, the relation to confidentiality starts to shift. And I have seen the reaction towards the collaboration project between Google and Apple when they implemented contact tracing technology. So for those who are actually ill and have these insidious virus, and it's not only about a single app with further updates. This is an app that is actually implanted within the system, so developers can have and access the data at any time. And I also have seen the shift in relation to this very fact when two biggest companies, tech companies, are collaborating and implementing a system that is basically a global surveillance application. However, the relation was shifted, and we see this project as some kind of virtue, some kind of reaction to what is happening, some kind of a view. Society was also shifted and changed, and the total surveillance concept is no longer what bothers us. The accident that we had 2 years ago about total surveillance, that basically ended up with nothing. It didn't change our relation to the surveillance. What Facebook and other social media gathered in terms of personal data. And during the first stage, I just want to remember you that during the first stage of Facebook, there were some flaws, and now we understand that basically the algorithms of Facebook are stronger than any government. And we now know that you can use cloud services and delivery services and stay at home. And Amazon at the same time gives hundreds of thousands of jobs to new people, to new stuff. And confidentiality is now not very within our sight. We understand that this is not only a thing of digitalizing, so to speak. And Jonah Draker created a notion, coined the term as that we are not now having a construct, and it correlates with what we have in vision. We create data, we create the sum of all facts that lie within a person or other living being. It also includes all prejudice and gives an opportunity to have a look at the person through a very subjective lens. And in her book, he made the graph. It is the very first one. This is distribution graph of population. And you see a number of columns, female in male population. And as an example, he also shows you another graph that actually explains us the process that are behind those graphs. We can see that the population in BC regions are always in the process of migration, because people maybe go to work, come from work to home, to other regions, and we can also see the distribution, the population distribution rather. And what she means is that we can no longer divide people to male and females, because it's all one network. And this term shifts our lens from the qualitative information, and because this approach only asks one question, how, and it never gives us access to other questions like what, when, where, and so forth. And she thinks that using a new approach may allow us to pose new questions and answer them. And the new approach to data actually implements not all bunch of data, but only that data that actually gives potent information. And the new form of data is called capta. It all goes to the Greek word. And if it is capta, not data, then we point out that we understand the subjectivity and incompleteness of the traditional data. And capta is what we can actually process through our reason. And the capta term is not only about making it qualitative, not quantitative. It is not only the raw data, but it is the data that was processed and captured by using special methodology. This term actually shifts again our point of view.
Опять-таки, да, в результате такого небольшого исследования мне
And I also carried out a study,
подумать о том, как
and
существовать
what's behind it is that the sensibility of our bodies
понимание процесса, которые лежат за данными, и мы мыслим чуть
actually affects our perception, and how we treat data also affects our
сервер, да, то есть сервер и
presence.
когда мы
And now we have those relations of a server and a client, and if we take a look further
магазинами, мы начинаем видеть
behind those e-stores, we finally can understand what's behind them, not only on the algorithmic level,
пандемии за невозможностью заменить человеческий труд на другой, Amazon набирает 200 новых сотрудников.
We understand the current situation. We see that some jobs are shrinking, and at the same time, Amazon employs thousands and thousands of people. And we see, for example, we know that medical workers not have enough PPE, but at the same time, we can find those PPE on online stores. And it is a very interesting interpretation of how we use technology and digital at these unprecedented times.
Создан AR-спектакль.
And as a result, I have an AR play. This is a little teaser for you.
Мне было также интересно и важно продолжать.
For me, it is also interesting to continue pursuing my work with environment, even when I fail to work with it properly. So what I tried is to implement new technology in working with the AR. So for example, you can use your flat, you can use your backyard to implant into these new technologies. This is some kind of a mixture of AR when you augment your reality with something.
Чувственного восприятия как виртуальной реальности, но этот медиум все-таки более демократичен, чем виртуальная реальность, потому что...
And I think that AR technology is somewhat more democratic in this sense than virtual reality, because it employs the logic of portals. You have portals, you can go through them and happen to be in a very different setting.
Произносится голосовым
And
синтезатором.
I also have sound messages that are synthesized.
Важная вещь в этом проекте это
And here I think the most important thing and the most evident fact
самая очевидная возможность дополненной реальности. Это соединение реального и виртуального и постепенно
to combine virtual
этот медиум он
and reality.
интересен.
And for me this is new, and for me this is very interesting.
Можем работать с пространством.
One of the tasks is when you way of anthropology. For example, you can make your narrative in a new way, narrative about what is dying out. And Evgeny told us that to convey corporate reality, we need to become more experienced and to train ourselves in perceiving our own body and the body of a different person. We called it a kind of a travel, but it is more travel related to optics. How can we make it more haptic? Can you please explain? It is, it's not haptic, it's captic.
В принципе, когда я опять-таки работал над inner migration,
when I was working at my project in migration,
факт, что зрители находятся в пространстве,
it was important for me that the viewers are within a space and they hold a device in their hands.
Да, с тем, как устраивается восприятие тела и чувственности через взаимодействие с устройствами. Это казалось очень интересно.
The perception of the body is related to interacting with a certain interface.
Он размещает
So
виртуальный объект на своем экране.
there is a kind of pattern that is the result of this interaction.
Для меня был важен. И мне кажется,
So it was the device itself as a connection was important for me.
Да. Да, этот проект, он состоит из
So this project
трех частей, которые
consists of three parts that are connected all together: hypertext narrative.
Сначала расскажу, что там есть. Там гипертекстовое произведение, многоканальное видео и
multi-channel video and augmented reality application.
На площадке нет живых людей, есть только
there are no living beings in this performance, only multi-channel video. At any point you can get access to hypertext narrative, and all the viewers in the audience room, yes, they take out the devices to get access to hypertext narrative, and we create a mass process of reading and swiping. They can use application for the augmented reality. So it is a kind of trigger for the viewer if they want to get more information.
В случае с Captive Voice этот опыт он еще более интимный, потому что
But this experience can be more intimate.
со своим телефоном, и он может
The viewer is within his own space and he is holding his mobile phone. He can move and listen. It turns out that we bring up something else to his own space.
We will continue with the music performance now by Rennick Bell. It's fantastic, so stay tuned. And yeah, we will have 25 minutes till it's midnight. So yes, thank you. Bye. Bye.